Nigeria, that goes back to the late 19th century and was followed by the dull British obsession with colonial administrative control and bureaucracy. Then, at the time of independence in 1960, the prevailing economic orthodoxy was adopted. High import controls, state-run industrialization, neglect of agriculture, and tight control of a private sector reluctant to fit in with the big plans. People in Africa admired the Soviet system then, and anti-colonialism, modernity, and development became associated with the Soviets and a more statist approach. But today things are different. Not so much of the neoliberalism of the 1990s, but more because of the success of deregulation, opening up, and privatization in countries like Brazil, Turkey, Indonesia, India, and elsewhere. The opening up policy in China began under Deng Xiaoping in 1979, and the regulatory reform process continued under Hu Jintao now. I worked with Zheng Bijian in the enormous and successful privatization and competition reform program in China 10 years ago. Now China is one of the most open and competitive-driven economies in the world, dominated by the new private sector. And don't we see the results of that globally? The international investment cash mountain resultant from these reforms in these emerging markets has become vast as a result. But when the Portuguese first arrived on the Nigerian coast in 1472, did they not find a thriving region with large cities and trade routes by river and overland to North Africa and the Middle East? Surprisingly for the underfed and exhausted Portuguese crews, they found goods from Southeast Europe and Turkey inland of the coast. But the Nigerian culture of freer economics and trade and technological innovation goes back a long way. Pre-colonial currencies in the 1600s had their origins in what is now Zanzibar and the Maldives. In 1786, a whole town, Calabar, was created in order to extend trade with the Europeans. 1,000 years ago, there was a vibrant trade with Europe and the Middle East via the Mediterranean, Nile, and Trans-Sahara routes. Remembering that this involved exports of higher technology from Nigeria to other parts of the less developed world. One should never forget this. But how far back do we want to go? 2,500 years ago, 35 miles from Abuja, there was metalworking more advanced than in Europe or China. Or shall we go even further back? 6,000 years ago, 2,000 years before the Egyptians built their structures, there were advanced ceramic kilns 100 kilometers from Abuja, way ahead of technology in Asia and Europe. We can go even further, back to 12,000 years ago, in an area which is now Ogikwe. There were organized agricultural settlements even during the European Ice Age. That is, even before managed agriculture has reached Southeast Europe. In this context, the era of overregulation will be seen as a blip. 50 years after independence, a new Nigeria is re-emerging. Just this year, we learned that Nigerians have invented a new low-cost, high-tech computer tablet. Our Nigerian mechanical engineer has invented a multilingual computer with a keyboard capable of typing characters of over 400 Nigerian languages. A team of Nigerian scientists at the NIPRD has discovered a lymphocyte baseline for testing HIV/AIDS, which will be used around the world. Another team of Nigerian scientists has developed a new type of power generator, which does not use hydrocarbon fuel. The National Space Research and Development Agency and the Raw Materials Development Research and Development Council will soon be established as part of a space center established at the University of Uyo. The list goes on. The economy and Nigerian innovation is waiting to be freed. To get there, reforms need to focus on competition and erosion of monopoly power, improving the quality of legislation, improving the quality of regulation, with the huge task of deregulation at its initial core. These will release the energies of the innovative and trade-orientated unified Nigerian peoples. It is indeed a wonderful event in the history of the continent. History is in the making before us all. I thank you, ladies and gentlemen.